What if you could ski on Mars? There's a moment, right as you push off, that everything feels wrong and perfect all at once. You're standing on a slope carved into the side of Olympus Mons, the tallest volcano in the solar system. The sky is a dim, burnt orange. The sun, barely more than a distant ember, throws long shadows across the landscape. Your skis, titanium alloy, reinforced for regolith traction, slide effortlessly over the frost-crusted surface. But it's not snow as we know it. It's micro-engineered ice particles, layered with Martian dust and carbon snow seeded by atmospheric generators. Each movement lifts you slightly higher than expected. You float instead of carve. Turn, leap, glide. And for a moment, it's as if you've become weightless. You are skiing on Mars. It sounds absurd, like something ripped from a child's science fiction sketchbook. And yet, here you are. Descending the Martian Alps. Your heart races, not from speed, but from the sheer disbelief that this is real. Mars, once a frozen red graveyard of dreams, is now an exotic resort for the most extreme sport imaginable. The question isn't, can we ski on Mars, but what if we already are? It's a future born from audacity. The idea of skiing on another planet doesn't begin with sport. It begins with obsession, humanity's restless drive to not just survive, but to thrive where no life was meant to exist. Skiing on Mars is the byproduct of technologies designed for climate stabilization, biological endurance, and artificial ecosystems. It's the child of necessity and imagination. And like all great leaps, it started as a ridiculous idea no one took seriously, until someone did. But skiing on Mars isn't just a sport. It's a symbol of how far we've come and how far we're willing to bend the rules of nature to make alien landscapes feel like home. It reflects something deeper about us, our refusal to be still, our addiction to novelty, our impulse to leave our footprints where there should be none. The world you're about to enter is not a utopia. It's raw, strange, and dangerously beautiful. The slopes of Mars aren't crowded yet, but they will be. And with every new track carved into red ice, a new question emerges. How much of Earth are we willing to recreate here? And what will we lose in the process? So, imagine this. A future not too far away. Colonists no longer tethered to underground domes. Terraforming has begun to whisper Earth-like conditions into the Martian atmosphere. And among the first great cultural imports? Not music, not literature, but skiing. Because when faced with a cold, hostile world millions of miles from home, what better way to conquer it than by sliding down its tallest mountains with style? Before we trace how this improbable dream became reality, we need to go back. Back to a time when Mars was nothing more than a goal, and skiing an absurd fantasy. To understand where we're going, we need to understand the Earth that birthed the idea. And it all began, not on the slopes of Olympus Mons, but in the melting valleys of the Alps. Before Martian ski lifts buzzed over crimson canyons, before influencers posed mid-air on zero-gravity jumps, and long before the first skier carved a line across alien snow, there was Earth, and it was changing fast. By the mid-21st century, the blue planet's winters were dying. The Alps, once the crown jewel of global skiing, had lost 70% of their snow cover. Ski towns turned into ghost towns. Resorts became museums of climate failure. Generations raised on powder and pine were left with slush and nostalgia. Economies collapsed. Youth left the mountains. Snow cannons became futile. What was once a seasonal celebration became a desperate ritual of denial. And while Earth's slopes melted, another frontier burned its way into the collective imagination: Mars. At first, the Red Planet was a project for dreamers and scientists. Space agencies launched missions with robotic explorers. Private companies staked their claim with promises of colonization. But for decades, these efforts remained limited, slow, and fragile. Mars was a place we pointed at, not a place we could touch. Then everything changed. 3 converging revolutions redefined our species: climate urgency, AI-led design, and biological adaptation. The first was desperation. Earth's climate chaos pushed humanity to reconsider survival in places previously deemed impossible. Desertification, coastal collapse, freshwater scarcity, every crisis on Earth made Mars look less like a fantasy and more like a backup. The second was autonomy. Artificial intelligence matured to the point where it could design, iterate, and deploy entire infrastructure systems without human micromanagement. From orbital shipping stations to autonomous mining rigs, AI did what human hands couldn't. It built Mars before we arrived. And the third, perhaps most critical, was biological redesign. Through CRISPR-based bioengineering and wearable exosystems, human bodies were no longer bound to Earth's tolerances. EVA suits evolved from bulky armor to skin-tight symbiotic membranes that regulated pressure, temperature, and radiation. People could walk, even ski on Mars. Not comfortably, but survivably. Terraforming hadn't reached Hollywood levels. The atmosphere was still thin, oxygen still synthetic, gravity still alien. But inside the domes, and increasingly outside of them, Mars began to feel manageable. And then came the snow. It wasn't planned. No Martian engineer set out to create ski conditions. The snow came from climate experiments, projects aimed at seeding atmospheric particles to lower surface temperatures and stabilize CO2 levels. Over time, this manipulation began to produce strange phenomena: frost across crater floors, ice patches on shadowed ridges, and finally, actual snowfall inside controlled biodomes. Psychologists were the first to notice the impact. Inhabitants of snowy zones reported reduced anxiety, improved sleep, and stronger social bonds. Snow was more than a substance. It was memory. It reminded colonists of Earth, of home. That's when the thought emerged. Quietly, absurdly, but persistently. What if we could ski on Mars? At first, it was a joke. Colonists in the Valles Marineris settlement posted mock posters for Mars Alpine Adventures. Someone taped skis to their rover. A Martian memes page went viral with edited footage of snowboarders leaping over Olympus Mons. But humor is often a prelude to invention. Within 5 years, the idea metastasized. Tech companies developed gravity-adjusted ski gear. Engineers carved practice slopes inside domes. Advanced terrain processors shaped alien soil into snow-retentive ridges. Biologists even experimented with cold algae, which gave Martian snow its characteristic bluish glow. The line between novelty and reality began to blur. Governments stayed quiet. Their focus remained on science, not sport. But the public, restless, disillusioned, and desperate for a new mythology, latched onto the dream. Skiing on Mars was no longer just possible. It was inevitable. It was the perfect storm: Earth's decay, technology's maturity, and humanity's hunger for wonder. Before the first skier ever touched a Martian slope, the world had already changed. Not just because we could go to Mars, but because, for the first time in centuries, we wanted to go somewhere completely new, to play. And with that subtle shift in desire, the trajectory of two planets began to intertwine. It began not with fireworks, but with silence. Sol 340N1, Martian year 37. Olympus Base. Just before local dawn, the first skier on Mars stood at the edge of a slope older than human civilization. Her name was Dr. Inez Moravec, a Czech-born geophysicist, alpine climber, and unlikely icon. She wasn't an athlete, she wasn't famous. She didn't even intend to make history. But in one moment of quiet rebellion, she became the first human to descend a Martian mountain on skis. The plan was simple. Olympus Mons, the tallest known volcano in the solar system, had become a site for geological surveys. Moravec was stationed at a high-altitude monitoring post, accessible only by drone lift. The slope beneath her was steep, packed with regolith, stabilized with synthetic frost from climate control experiments. It had never been skied, not because it couldn't, but because no one had dared. Until that morning. Moravec wore a modified EVA exosuit engineered for flexibility and thermal regulation. Her skis, custom-made carbon-ceramic composites, had been smuggled aboard a cargo drop under recreational biomechanics equipment. Her heart pounded as her boots clicked into the bindings. Cameras were mounted. A live drone buzzed quietly overhead. She didn't say anything. No dramatic countdown, just a breath. And then she pushed. Her glide was sluggish at first. The low gravity, just 38% of Earth's, meant less friction, slower acceleration, more float. But momentum built. The slope curved gently downward into a Martian valley where ice crystals shimmered like powdered ruby. Each turn carved a line into a surface no one had touched for billions of years. There was no sound, only her breathing, the crunch of snow dust beneath her, the soft hiss of air filtration systems. Her descent lasted 43 minutes. On Earth, it would have been 5. But when she reached the bottom, when her skis came to rest against a basalt outcrop dusted with frozen CO2, she didn't speak. She simply looked up, back toward the endless curve of the slope, and smiled. The world exploded. Within minutes, the footage, live-streamed back to Earth, was clipped, shared, subtitled, memed. Media dubbed it the first descent. Within 24 hours, it had become the most watched broadcast in human history. And not just among ski enthusiasts. The image of a single human gracefully moving through an alien, silent wilderness awakened something deeper. It was elegance meeting extremity, tranquility meeting terror, familiarity colliding with the unfathomable. Moravec didn't seek fame, but it found her anyway. Interviews, biopics, a scholarship fund in her name. Her quote, simple, accidental, became legend. It felt like dancing with gravity on pause. But beyond the headlines and hero worship, something else happened, quietly, but with more consequence. Governments noticed the reaction, so did corporations, so did Mars' own administrators. The idea that Mars could be more than habitable, that it could be aspirational, triggered a shift in how resources were allocated. Recreation, once considered a distraction from survival, became a strategic priority. Joy, it turned out, was a vital part of colonization. Funding was rerouted. Experimental ski zones were authorized. AI systems began mapping potential resort zones using terrain data and snow retention models. Earth's most elite designers, architects, engineers, sports physicists, were invited to a new kind of project, making Mars fun. Of course, not everyone approved. Survivalists accused Moravec of endangering herself for vanity. Environmentalists worried about disturbing fragile Martian geology, but their voices were drowned out by the chorus of enthusiasm. The idea had already taken root. The red planet was no longer just red. It was alive, interactive, playable. The phrase Martian alpine culture entered the lexicon. Mars was no longer a backdrop. It was a frontier for human experience, not just biologically, but emotionally. And at the heart of it all was a solitary skier, carving the first signature into the untouched canvas of another world. In the months following Moravec's first descent, something strange began to happen. Mars became fashionable. What had once been the domain of engineers and survivalists now echoed with a different kind of ambition. Skiing on Mars was no longer an act of defiance. It was the beginning of an industry. A new kind of economy took shape, one not fueled by mining or science, but by thrill, by novelty, by the promise of carving turns on alien ice. They called it the snow economy. At first, the infrastructure was crude. Makeshift lodges, converted atmospheric research stations, were retrofitted with heating, bunk beds, and simulated wood paneling. Solar arrays powered lifts fashioned from decommissioned mining cranes. Slope grooming was done by repurposed drones trained in terrain mapping, but the demand was relentless. Earth's ultra-wealthy, hungry for exclusive experiences, were the first to line up. Martian ski trips became the new Everest. One percenters paid millions to spend 90 seconds gliding across crimson snow in suits that cost more than Earth-side mansions. The images they returned with, sinuous turns beneath a pale sun, became status symbols, advertisements for a future no longer rooted to a single planet. Mars was no longer a scientific destination. It was a luxury brand. Investment poured in. Earth's biggest sportswear companies collaborated with aerospace firms to develop flexible suits, optimized for low temperatures, low gravity, and high visibility. AI-generated resort designs, tailored to Martian topography, began to spring up across the Tharsis Plateau and Valles Marineris. Some were sealed under massive glass domes, complete with atmospheric regulation and synthetic snow cycles. Others remained exposed, catering to extreme skiers willing to brave the raw conditions for the ultimate thrill. Within 5 years, skiing on Mars accounted for over 12% of Martian resource allocation. Entire supply chains were redirected to support the influx of tourists. Water, once rationed to the milliliter, was now sublimated into snow for leisure. Construction materials once prioritized for habitation were diverted to build resorts, observation decks, even luxury chalets perched above the calderas of ancient volcanoes. On Earth, public fascination exploded. VR live streams allowed people to experience Martian skiing in real time, with haptic suits mimicking the floaty physics of low-gravity turns. Virtual ski schools opened, promising to prepare clients for the unique movement style needed to navigate Martian slopes. Social media birthed a new influencer class: Martian athletes, daredevils, and lifestyle icons whose every move was followed like myth. The cultural shift was immediate. Children no longer dreamed of becoming astronauts. They wanted to be Martian shredders. Universities offered dual degrees in planetary science and ski dynamics. A Martian skiing federation formed, with Earth-side qualifiers and off-world finals. Earth's media dubbed Mars the Aspen of the cosmos. But not everyone celebrated. Scientists warned of ecosystem imbalances. Terraforming was still in its infancy, and the introduction of artificial snow and structural mass threatened to destabilize delicate experiments. Dust storms, once seasonal and predictable, began arriving early, scattering regolith across newly carved slopes. Polar ice caps, once sacrosanct, were now being tapped for snowmaking water, risking irreversible loss. Ethicists raised another alarm. The leisure colonization of Mars reflected old Earth patterns: privatization, exploitation, and environmental disregard repackaged in shiny, futuristic wrapping. The first Martian settlements had been born from collective effort. Now, they risked becoming gated playgrounds for the interplanetary elite. And then there were the colonists themselves. Many early settlers, scientists, builders, medics, found themselves priced out of the very domes they had helped construct. Housing inflation exploded as ski resorts expanded into prime real estate zones. Supplies were redirected. Transit systems, once optimized for utility, now prioritized tourist flow. The cost of living soared. Tensions brewed beneath the surface. Still, the powder kept falling. Skiing had become Mars' first true cultural export. It wasn't just a sport. It was an identity, a vision, a sales pitch. And despite the warnings, the crashes, the dust storms, and ethical gray zones, no one could deny it. The red planet had become fun. And humanity, once content to survive among the stars, now demanded something more: pleasure. As the excitement of the snow economy blossomed, subtle cracks began to appear beneath the glossy surface of Martian life. The initial euphoria, the rush of possibility, the novelty of skiing in a low-gravity wonderland, was gradually tempered by emerging consequences that challenged the very foundations of this off-world society. Environmentally, Mars was a fragile giant. Its atmosphere was still tenuous, held together by thin layers of CO2 and dust. Terraforming efforts had made progress, but the planet remained vulnerable. The artificial snow that coated slopes was not snow as nature intended. It was the product of delicate atmospheric engineering, reliant on water extraction from polar ice and aerosol seeding. With skiing's growing demand, vast quantities of water ice were diverted for leisure rather than life support. Polar ice caps, the ancient reservoirs critical for regulating Mars's climate, began shrinking at an accelerated rate. This triggered a cascade of environmental effects: altered atmospheric pressure, shifts in temperature gradients, and increased frequency of dust storms. These storms, already a persistent hazard, became more violent and unpredictable, sometimes lasting weeks and delaying crucial scientific and industrial operations. Human health, too, began to show signs of strain. The low gravity, initially a boon for effortless movement and graceful skiing, took a toll on musculoskeletal strength. Colonists developed bone density loss and muscle atrophy at unprecedented rates, despite advanced exercise regimens and medical interventions. Long-term exposure to radiation outside protective domes also led to higher incidences of cancers and genetic mutations, exacerbated by the increasing outdoor activities encouraged by recreational culture. Socially, the growth of ski tourism deepened existing inequalities. The Martian elite, the tourists, celebrities, and investors, thrived in luxurious resorts, insulated from many hardships. Meanwhile, the original settlers, scientists, and support staff found themselves marginalized, struggling to afford rising costs of living. The cultural divide hardened, creating distinct classes defined not just by wealth, but by planetary mobility. Those who could roam the red slopes freely, and those bound to labor in service of the burgeoning leisure industry. Political tensions flared. Local governance structures, initially collaborative and experimental, became battlegrounds for control over land, resources, and infrastructure. The privatization of prime skiing territory sparked protests and demands for equitable resource distribution. Calls for regulation clashed with the interests of multinational corporations and space agencies eager to capitalize on the Martian craze. Perhaps most profoundly, the cultural psyche shifted. Mars was no longer just a place for survival or exploration. It had become a playground, and with that came questions about identity and purpose. What did it mean to be Martian? Were they pioneers of a new frontier, or inheritors of Earth's reckless patterns? Could a society built on leisure and spectacle endure the harsh realities of an alien world? The very act of skiing, once a symbol of freedom and joy, came to embody these contradictions. The sport that united human and Martian ambitions also highlighted the fragility of this precarious existence. Yet, amid the growing challenges, hope persisted. Scientists and ethicists called for sustainable innovations, water recycling technologies, artificial gravity habitats, and stricter environmental protections. Social activists pushed for inclusive policies to bridge divides and preserve Martian culture beyond commerce. The red slopes remained, dusted in engineered snow, a testament to human adaptability, ambition, and hubris. But beneath their shimmering surface, shadows lengthened. Mars had become a mirror, reflecting humanity's highest aspirations and deepest flaws. A world where the thrill of skiing danced alongside the looming threat of collapse. To truly understand what makes skiing on Mars possible and perilous, we must dive beneath the surface of this alien world, into the very mechanisms that govern gravity, atmosphere, biology, and technology. First, gravity. Mars's gravity is about 38% that of Earth's. This means everything on Mars weighs roughly a third of what it does back home. For a skier, this translates to longer airtime during jumps, gentler landings, and the sensation of almost floating over the terrain. But it also means the physics of movement change dramatically. The reduced downward force means less friction between skis and surface, which at first sounds ideal. But it also makes balance more precarious, turns less responsive, and requires new techniques. Ski equipment had to be redesigned. Lighter, more flexible, with adaptive bindings that could handle the thin crust of icy dust. Then there's the atmosphere. Mars's atmosphere is about 1% as dense as Earth's and composed mostly of carbon dioxide. This thin air offers almost no natural insulation or oxygen. Without life support suits, human bodies would quickly succumb. This thin atmosphere also means sound travels differently, almost inaudible, And weather behaves in strange ways. Dust storms can engulf the entire planet, but crucially, the low pressure makes water boil at much lower temperatures, complicating snow formation. So how do you get snow on Mars? The snow that blankets the slopes isn't like Earth's powdery flakes. It's artificially engineered through terraforming technologies designed to seed the atmosphere with water vapor and freeze it into fine ice particles. These particles mix with fine regolith dust, creating a unique red snow that sparkles under the weak sunlight. Climate control systems use orbital mirrors and surface-based aerosols to manage temperature fluctuations, allowing these snowfalls to occur mostly during Martian winter. Biologically, humans have adapted in incredible ways. Our bodies evolved under Earth's gravity and atmosphere. On Mars, the low gravity causes muscles to weaken and bones to lose density. To combat this, colonists wear exosuits embedded with resistant systems, simulating Earth's gravitational pull. These suits also protect against radiation, the cosmic rays that bombard Mars unfiltered due to the lack of a magnetic field. Advanced AI monitors biometrics in real time, adjusting suit functions to optimize safety and performance during outdoor activities like skiing. Quantum technologies have quietly played a part too. Quantum sensors embedded in skis detect minute variations in terrain density and composition, feeding data to onboard AI that subtly adjusts bindings and balance assists. This fusion of quantum computing and biomechanics allows skiers to navigate the unpredictable Martian surfaces with unprecedented precision. Artificial intelligence is the unsung hero. From the early terraforming drones to the ski resort management systems, AI orchestrates nearly every aspect of the Martian skiing experience. AI algorithms predict weather patterns, optimize snow distribution, and maintain slope safety by controlling autonomous grooming robots. AI coaches help newcomers master the unique low-gravity skiing techniques, personalizing training regimens based on physiological data. Even the molecular level tells a story. Scientists have engineered cold-resistant biofilms, living organisms seated on snow surfaces, to stabilize the red snowpack, preventing rapid sublimation. These biofilms also contribute to oxygen generation and carbon sequestration, essential for the slow transformation of Mars into a more Earth-like habitat. All these factors, gravity, atmosphere, biology, quantum tech, and AI, interweave to create a delicate balance that makes skiing on Mars possible. But this balance is fragile. A slight shift in atmospheric pressure, a failure in suit technology, or an unexpected dust storm could turn a leisurely descent into a life-threatening ordeal. In this crucible of science and adventure, humanity is rewriting the rules of what it means to play, survive, and adapt beyond Earth. Mars skiing is more than sport. It's a testament to human ingenuity at the intersection of physics, biology, and technology. And as we glide over the red slopes, we're not just skiing. We're skiing on the frontier of possibility itself. For years, Mars had been a delicate dance between technology and nature, human ambition and planetary fragility. But then came the storm that no one saw coming. It started as a whisper in the data feeds. Slight anomalies in atmospheric pressure, subtle changes in dust composition. The terraforming AI flagged minor irregularities, but its warnings were buried beneath layers of routine alerts. The snow economy was booming. No one wanted to slow down. Then, suddenly, the dust storm arrived. But this was no ordinary Martian storm. It was a planetary tempest, vast and violent, engulfing nearly 80% of the surface. Unlike anything recorded, this storm lasted for 53 sols, over 50 Earth days, and brought with it unprecedented levels of fine dust, electrical activity, and temperature fluctuations. Ski resorts on Olympus Mons and Valles Marineris were among the hardest hit. Automated systems failed as dust clogged sensors and solar arrays. The artificial snow vanished, sublimated by sudden temperature spikes and dry winds. The delicate biofilms that stabilized the snowpack were destroyed. Visibility dropped to near zero. Communication arrays went dark. The human toll was immediate. Tourists stranded in glass-domed resorts faced critical oxygen shortages as power grids faltered. Emergency evacuations became nightmares of chaos and panic. Several colonists suffered radiation exposure as protective systems failed during the blackout. Supply chains for food and water were disrupted. Psychological trauma soared. But the storm's fury extended beyond infrastructure. Environmental scientists realized the dust was not just a nuisance, it was toxic. The storm had stirred ancient perchlorates and heavy metals buried beneath the surface, spreading them across vast areas. Long-term soil contamination threatened agriculture zones. Mars's already thin atmosphere grew more unstable. Politically, the crisis exploded. Investors pulled funding. Governments demanded investigations. Lawsuits filed by displaced colonists accused corporations of negligence. The once celebrated snow economy was now a symbol of reckless exploitation. Protests erupted in domed cities. The fragile social fabric began to tear. Behind closed doors, scientists warned the storm was a direct consequence of terraforming overreach and resource mismanagement. The push to create artificial snowfields, extract polar ice, and expand leisure zones had disturbed Mars' environmental equilibrium. Yet the response was slow. Corporate boards hesitated, balancing profit against sustainability. Regulators debated but failed to act decisively. The public watched in horror and fascination, their dreams of interplanetary recreation overshadowed by fear. For the first time, humanity on Mars confronted its limits. The sport that symbolized freedom now represented vulnerability. The slopes that promised transcendence became sites of tragedy. In the aftermath, the question haunted everyone. Had the desire to play on Mars blinded us to the planet's true nature? Had ambition pushed too far, too fast? Mars was no longer just a playground. It was a warning. But amid the rubble, a spark remained. Humanity had faced disasters before, on Earth, in the skies, beneath oceans. Each catastrophe was a call to adapt, to rebuild smarter, to respect the forces beyond control. The Red Planet crisis would be no different. The snowstorm that shattered dreams marked the end of innocence on Mars. But it also ignited the drive to survive, innovate, and redefine what it meant to live and ski on a world so unlike our own. The aftermath of the Great Dust Storm was a reckoning, a brutal lesson etched into every scarred slope and every weary face. Mars's most ambitious experiment, the snow economy, had nearly collapsed. But human resilience, as always, sparked a fierce determination to adapt and rebuild. The first step was survival. Emergency protocols were overhauled. New dome designs integrated fail-safes, independent power grids, underground refuges, and advanced radiation shields. Water recycling technology was accelerated, ensuring that no drop was wasted, even in crisis. Medical teams developed rapid response units specialized in radiation sickness and psychological trauma, addressing the storm's invisible wounds. But survival was only the beginning. The bigger challenge was to reimagine Mars as a place where both humans and the planet could thrive. Governments, corporations, and colonists convened unprecedented councils, interplanetary forums charged with creating sustainable policies. The era of unchecked expansion was over. New environmental regulations limited water extraction from the polar caps, balancing leisure needs with planetary health. Artificial snowmaking was scaled back, replaced by technologies designed to enhance natural frost formation without destabilizing ecosystems. Social equity became a rallying cry. Housing initiatives prioritized early settlers and essential workers, ensuring that the Martian elite no longer monopolized prime real estate. Subsidized transport systems reconnected isolated communities. Education programs integrated environmental stewardship with cultural heritage, fostering a sense of shared responsibility. Technology evolved rapidly. Artificial gravity habitats, once a luxury, became widespread, offering protection from bone and muscle degradation. Exosuits advanced with adaptive AI, allowing safer outdoor activity even during unpredictable weather. Quantum sensors enhanced weather forecasting, providing critical hours of warning before storms. Autonomous drones undertook continuous environmental monitoring, reducing human risk. But the most radical solution came from a surprising source: planetary migration. With Mars's environment still fragile, a coalition of scientists proposed a bold idea: to spread human presence beyond the surface. Subterranean cities tunneled beneath the regolith promised stable temperatures, radiation protection, and controlled ecosystems. Space elevators and orbital habitats created new hubs of habitation and leisure, connected by hyperloop transports. Skiing itself transformed. Freed from the constraints of the surface, skiers began exploring zero-gravity parks within massive rotating stations, simulating Martian conditions without exposing participants to dangers. Virtual reality merged with physical activity, offering training and entertainment without environmental cost. Ethics, too, underwent a renaissance. Martian society debated questions that once seemed academic. What rights did a planet hold? How should humanity balance exploration with preservation? Could leisure coexist with responsibility? New philosophical movements emerged, blending Earth's environmentalism with a Martian pragmatism born from hard lessons. The rebuilding was not easy. Conflicts flared between traditionalists and innovators, between profit and protection, between dreamers and realists. But through it all, the shared memory of the dust storm forged unity. Mars was no longer just a frontier for play. It was a proving ground for a new kind of civilization, one built on respect, ingenuity, and the humility to accept limits. And as the red sun rose over slowly healing slopes, a new generation looked beyond mere survival. They envisioned a future where skiing on Mars was not just a thrill, but a symbol of harmony between humanity and an alien world. The struggle to rebuild on thin ice had begun, but so had the chance to get it right. From the ashes of crisis, Mars was reborn, not just as a rugged outpost or a fleeting playground, but as a crucible for a future unlike any Earth had known. The red dust still whispered tales of hardship, but the pioneers who remained dreamed bigger, of a civilization forged in balance, innovation, and radical possibility. Cities no longer clung to surface domes alone. Beneath the Martian crust, vast subterranean networks thrived. Caverns transformed into sprawling habitats, shielded from radiation and wild storms. Here, gravity was simulated, climates controlled, and ecosystems carefully nurtured. Life underground became a new normal, blending human technology with the mysterious geology of the planet itself. Above ground, the landscape was no longer scarred by unchecked development. Terraforming efforts, slowed but smarter, created pockets of breathable air and natural frost, places where native ice danced with engineered snow in fragile harmony. Ski resorts transformed into ecological sanctuaries, blending sport with conservation. Technology had leapt forward. Quantum computing powered environmental simulations so precise they predicted weather patterns decades in advance. AI-managed agriculture ensured food security in biodomes. Space elevators linked orbiting stations with surface cities, creating a seamless flow of people and goods. And virtual reality merged with physical experience, offering simulated adventures for those unable to brave the thin air. Social structures evolved too. Martian citizenship was redefined, not by birthplace, but by contribution to the collective well-being. Cooperative governance replaced corporate monopolies. Communities organized around shared values of sustainability, exploration, and education. A new Martian culture blossomed, combining Earth heritage with fresh perspectives born from living beyond a world of blue skies and thick air. Skiing, once the symbol of reckless ambition, became a metaphor for this new balance. It was no longer about thrill alone, but about harmony with the environment and self-awareness. Zero-gravity parks and underground slopes offered challenges adapted to physical realities. Skiers became ambassadors, educators, and environmental stewards. Beyond Mars, humanity's gaze turned outward. Colonies on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn beckoned. The lessons learned on the Red Planet about adaptation, humility, and resilience became blueprints for life in the outer solar system. Mars was no longer the final frontier, but the foundation of a new era of cosmic citizenship. Yet, despite the leaps, uncertainty remained. What would become of Earth, now slowly healing? Could two worlds coexist, one ancient and blue, the other young and red, linked by shared history and fragile hope? How would human identity transform as species born on Mars looked back at the planet of their ancestors with both reverence and distance? These questions shaped the Martian ethos, a recognition that survival was only the beginning and that thriving demanded constant reflection, balance, and care. As night fell over the red horizon, illuminated by distant stars and the faint glow of human habitats, the future stretched out like an untouched slope, inviting, challenging, and endlessly mysterious. In this new world, skiing was no longer just a sport. It was a celebration of possibility, a dance between humanity and the cosmos, a reminder that even on alien soil, we could carve paths toward hope. Looking back on the journey from Earth's fading winters to the pioneering ski trails on Mars, we find a story far greater than the thrill of gliding over alien snow. It is a story about humanity's spirit, our relentless drive to explore, adapt, and find joy even in the most inhospitable places. Skiing on Mars began as a daring fantasy, an audacious question whispered among scientists and dreamers. What if we could not just survive, but play on another planet? That question unlocked innovation in technology, biology, and society, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Yet it also exposed our vulnerabilities, environmental fragility, social inequities, and the unforeseen consequences of human ambition. The dust storms, the ecological strain, and the tensions between settlers and tourists remind us that every leap into the unknown carries risks that must be met with humility and responsibility. Mars became a mirror, reflecting not only our aspirations, but also our flaws. It forced us to ask, what does it mean to be human in a new world? How do we balance survival with culture, progress with preservation, freedom with stewardship? The answers are still unfolding. What remains clear is that the act of skiing on Mars, this improbable blend of sport and science, became more than recreation. It became a symbol of connection between Earth and Mars, between technology and nature, between individuals and community. In the slow dance over red ice, we see humanity's potential to shape new realities while honoring the old. We learn that adaptation requires not just invention, but respect for the environment, for each other, and for the delicate balance that sustains life. And as future generations strap on their skis beneath alien skies, they carry forward lessons learned through triumph and trial. The snow beneath their feet is not just frozen water or engineered frost. It is a canvas, blank and inviting, on which to write the next chapter of human story. So, what if you could ski on Mars? Maybe the better question is, what if you could help shape the future where that skiing isn't just a dream or a spectacle, but a testament to our shared capacity to imagine, to endure, and to flourish beyond the bounds of our home? The red slopes beckon, reminding us that even in the harshest places, humanity's hope can glide freely. And that hope, like every skier's first descent, begins with a single daring push forward. Thanks for joining this journey across the red slopes of Mars, where science meets adventure and imagination meets reality. Skiing on Mars might sound like pure fantasy, but it's a glimpse into what human curiosity and resilience can achieve when we dare to dream beyond our earthly limits. If there's one takeaway, it's this. The future isn't something that just happens. It's something we create. Whether it's carving a path down a Martian mountain or facing the challenges of a changing Earth, our choices shape the worlds we live in. So keep wondering, keep exploring, and maybe, one day, you'll be the one to take that first thrilling glide on an alien slope. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. What would you want to try first if you could ski on Mars? Until next time, keep looking up and keep imagining the impossible.